Hey everyone, I'm going to show you how to crochet this really pretty pattern. It's one of the many variations of the pineapple stitch, and it's really special because the way it's made, the pineapples are going to puff up, giving it this really cool 3D effect. So you can use this in shawls, scarves, blankets, dresses, blouses, and even beachwear. So we'll create this pattern using chains, double crochets, and puff shells. So in this tutorial, I'm going to be using 100% polyester yarn, that's medium weight 4, and a 4mm hook. So please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you learned something new or enjoy this video. I will be posting tutorials regularly, so please leave me comments down below with any questions, suggestions, or feedback. So let's get started. So to begin, create a slip knot. And chain 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And we're going to slip stitch into this first chain, but instead of going in the front of this chain, I'm actually going to go in the back bump. But if you prefer to go in the top, that is totally okay as well. So there's my slip stitch, and I'm going to chain 1. And when I chain 1, I'm going to pull up the loop just a little bit, and I'm going to yarn over and pull up 3 loops on my hook from the center of this circle. So yarn over, and I'm going to go inside the circle, and I'm going to grab my yarn and pull up 1, yarn over, inside my circle, pull up 2, yarn over, inside, pull up 3, and I'm going to close this puff stitch by yarning over and pulling through all the loops on my hook, yarning over and closing it. Now I'm going to chain 2. 1, 2. We're going to repeat this puff stitch again in the same circle. So yarn over, pull up 1, yarn over, pull up 2, yarn over, pull up 3, yarn over and pull through all the loops on your hook and close the puff. Chain 2, 1, 2, and repeat. 1, 2, and 3. Close the puff stitch and chain 2, 1, 2, and place one more set of puff stitch in this circle. So we're going to go 1, 2, and 3. So you should have 4 sets of puff stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4. To continue, let's turn the work, and we are going to slip stitch into this first chain stitch of 2 that we made in the previous row. So slip stitch and pull up the loop. We're going to be placing puff stitches in this chain space. So we're going to do 3 loops on the hook again. So that's 1, 2, 3, yarn over and close the puff. Chain 2, 1, 2, and place another puff in the same chain space. 1, 2, and 3, yarn over and pull through all the loops on your hook. So we are going to be starting every single row with this puff shell. Now chain 2, 1, 2, and we are going to place a double crochet into this chain space. So 1 double crochet, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and place another double crochet in the same chain space. Chain 2, and we're going to end the row by placing a puff shell in the last chain space. So we're going to pull up 3 loops on our hook, 1, 2, 3, and we're going to close the puff. And we're going to chain 2, 1, 2, And we're going to place another puff stitch in the same chain space. So that's 3 loops up, and then I'm going to close it. We're going to end every single row with a puff shell, just like how we begin each row with a puff shell. So this will look like this. To always start the next row, you're going to turn your work and slip stitch into the chain space. Pull up the yarn and place a puff stitch. Chain 2. Now you're going to chain 2, or close the puff first and then chain 2, 1, 2, and we will be placing 10 double crochets into this middle chain space. So we're going to skip this first one and go straight in here, 10 double crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. 10 double crochets. Now chain 2, 1, 2, and end the row with a puff stitch shell. Turn your work and slip stitch. Pull up and start the puff shell. 1, 2, 3, chain 2, 1, 2, and 3. Chain 2, 1, 2, and we are going to be double crocheting on these double crochets that we made in the previous row, but instead of going the traditional way of placing a double crochet into these chains right here, we are going to start creating this puff effect on our pineapple by double crocheting on the post of each double crochet. So we are going to be going under each of these double crochets. So we're going to prepare for a double crochet and go underneath the post. So that's the first one. And then we are going to do it for every single one of these 10 double crochets that we made. So again, find the post, go underneath and come out. That's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and the last one, last post, go right underneath it. 10. Now chain 2 and close this row with a shell stitch. Turn the work and slip stitch, pull up and create your puff shell. So we've made 2 rows of double crochets already, and we're going to be making our 3rd row of double crochets. So when we are on this part about to create the 3rd row of double crochets, we want to make sure that we add another set of 3 loop puff shell into the same chain space. So I created the traditional shell that we always begin with, the 3 loops, chain 2, 3 loops, but we are going to chain 2, 1, 2, and we're going to add another puff into the same chain space. So push it over and go ahead and pull up another 3 loops on your hook in the same chain space. So now you have 3 puffs inside this shell from the previous row. Now close the puff and chain 2, 1, 2. So in the previous row, we went underneath each of the posts. This time around, we are going to be alternating going underneath each post and going over each post. So in the last one, we went underneath. So in this one, we're going to switch it up and go over. So we're going to be placing 10 double crochets in each of these posts by going over. So I'll show you how to do that. You prepare for a double crochet and you come from underneath right here. You go on top of the post and slip into the bottom of it. And then you grab your yarn and you proceed with a double crochet. You're going to be doing that for each of these 10 posts. So up, over the post and back down, pull, and complete your double crochet. So underneath, over the post, back down, pull the yarn up, and double crochet. So just keep going until you have all 10 posts complete. We're on 8, 9, and last one, go underneath, over the post and back down, and pull up. 10. To continue, let's chain 2, 1, 2, and we are going to be creating the same 3 puffs in this last shell like how we did in the beginning. So 1, 2, 3, chain 2, 1, 2, 3, chain 2 again, and the final puff in the same chain space. 2 and 3. Close the puff. And turn our work. So slip stitch into this chain space, pull it up, and create a puff shell in this same chain space. So that's 1, 2, and 3. Chain 2, create a shell, so go ahead and place another puff in there. 1, 2, 3. Close, chain 2, 1, 2, and create a shell right on top of this chain space. 1, 2, 3, and chain 2, and final puff set. 1, 2, and 3. Close it up. So you can see the last row we made 3 puffs, and then in this row we placed a shell in between each of those puffs. So we ended up with 2 sets of shells, one here and one here, when traditionally we only had 2. We're beginning to increase. Okay, so to continue, let's chain 2, 1, 2. And since we went underneath and over in the last one, we are going to alternate and go underneath this time, underneath the posts. But we are going to start decreasing the pineapple so that it takes on that pointy shape. So how we're going to do that is we are going to skip the first post, and we're going to double crochet into the post of the second one. So we went over the post last time, so we'll be going underneath the post this time. So 1, go underneath, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Since we skipped this first post, we are going to be skipping this last post. So we should only have 8 double crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Chain 2, 1, 2, and we are going to repeat what we did here in the last chain spaces. So we're going to put a shell, a puff shell in this first chain space. 1, 2, 3, yarn over, close, chain 2, 1, 2, 3, yarn over, pull through, chain 2, 1, 2, and place a final stitch in this last chain space. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, and 3. Close it up, turn your work, and we will be beginning the next row. So, like always, we are going to slip stitch into this chain space. We're going to pull up a loop, and we're going to place a shell in this first set of shell right here. So that's 1, 2, 3, chain 2, and 1, 2, and 3. So if you notice, we have 4 puff stitches. In the beginning, we also started with 4 puff stitches, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we are going to start repeating the pattern from the beginning. So we place this first puff shell right there, and then we're going to be chaining 2 and double crocheting 2 in this middle chain space. So chain 2, 1, 2, and place a double crochet in the next chain space. And again, just like in the beginning, we're going to chain 3 right here. So 1, 2, 3, and place another double crochet in that same chain space. And this is going to set up for our next puff pineapple. Chain 2, 1, 2, and place a shell into the shell beneath it. 1, 2, 3, up, chain 2, and another set of puffs. Close it up, chain 2, 1, 2. We're going to be continuing to decrease our pineapple design. So just a little tip, when you start seeing this side of the pineapple that has the levels, you know that when you're on this side, you should be going on top of the post. Whereas if you're seeing this side, the flat side that's becoming puffy, you should be going underneath the posts. So because we're on the side that looks like it has different levels, we're going to be going on top of the posts, coming from behind. So continue to decrease. So we'll skip that first post and we'll go right into the second one, going on top of the post. So double crochet, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So skip that last one. So we had 10, 10, 10, and then we had 8, and now we have 6. So chain 2, 1, 2, and create a shell in this chain space that has the shell underneath it. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And again, like how in the beginning of the row, we're going to set up for our next pineapple puff. So we need to chain 2 and place a double crochet in this next chain space. And then we're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and place another double crochet in that same chain space. Now we're going to chain 2 and finish up the row by placing a puff shell in this last puff shell. 1, 2, place the final puff of the row into the last chain space. That's 3. Chain 2 and pull up 3 again. So 1, 2, and 3. Turn your work and slip stitch into that chain space. Pull up the loop and put a shell to begin. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. 1, 2, 3. Now we're going to be placing 10 double crochets into this chain space of 3 that we made. So we're going to skip this first one and go in there. So as you can see, we are repeating the pattern and we are right here, starting the next pineapple. So 10 double crochets into this chain space right here. But first you have to chain 2, 1, 2, and then 10 double crochets. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So now we're right here. Chain 2, 1, 2, and place a puff shell right here. 1, 2, 3, chain 2, 1, 2, 3. Okay, chain 2, 1, 2, and like I said, when you see this puffy side of the pineapple, we will not be going on top of the posts. Instead, we'll be coming in from underneath the posts. So yarn over and double crochet into this post, but we are continuing to decrease, so we will skip this first one and go straight in here into the second one. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. So now we're down to 4 double crochets. Chain 2, 1, 2, place a shell into the shell below it. So 1, 2, 3, we're going to be placing 10 double crochets right here to set up for the shell or for the pineapple puff on this side. So right here. So chain 2, 1, 2, and put 10 double crochets in this chain space. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Chain 2, 1, 2, and end the row with a puff shell. Turn the work and slip stitch and place a puff shell to begin. Now we are going to just be continuing the pattern for the pineapple shell or for the pineapple puff. So we're going to chain 2. And remember, in this one we started by going underneath. It's going to change depending on the main pineapple. So if you see the main pineapple, we're looking at the side that has the different levels. So that means even though in this first one, in the first pineapple, we started going underneath the post, we are going to follow the pattern that we already have. So this is the back side. So instead of going underneath, like how we started our very first pineapple, we're going to follow it. We're going to follow the pattern, and we're actually going to go on top of it. So we are going to place our hook here in this chain space, and we're going to go on top of the post, and we're going to continue with a double crochet on top of the post, double crochet, and we're going to do that for all 10 posts. So always refer to your first pineapple that you made and figure out which pattern you should be, or which side of the post you should be double crocheting on, because if you start on the wrong side, then we will not have a uniform project. Some of our pineapples will be puffy, and then some of them will have the levels, which is technically the wrong side. So always refer to that first pineapple. So we placed 10 double crochets. So you see, I ended up creating the level side of the pineapples here, same as the level side of the first pineapple. So now we can make sure that our project will be even. So let's continue by chaining 2, 1, 2, and we are going to be placing a shell right here. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so now let's chain 2, 1, 2. We're going to continue to decrease this pineapple, but this will be our final decrease. Before, we would put a double crochet in each of these double crochets, but since this is our last row of decrease, we are going to be putting 2 double crochets together. So this is the level side, or the side with the levels on it. So we will be going on top of the posts, and we're going to be double crocheting these 2 in the middle together. So I'll show you how to do that. Yarn over, go on top of this post, pull it up, yarn over, pull through 2 loops on your hook, so you have 2 left. Before we finish this, we're going to yarn over and prepare for a double crochet into this next post. So come in again from underneath, put it on top of that post, double crochet. So now you have 4 loops on your hook. You're going to yarn over and pull through just 2. Then you're going to yarn over and pull through all 3 of those loops to complete the double crochet together. So now we have a perfect decreasing pineapple. Let's continue chain 2, 1, 2, place a shell right here. Chain 2. We're going to repeat what we did in the beginning to the double crochets at the end. So we're going to follow the pattern of the first pineapple that has the levels, and we're going to go from the back and on top of this post. So let's do all 10 posts the same way, coming from the back on top of the post. So that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and final one, 10. Let's continue by chaining 2 and placing a shell in the shell beneath it. Turn your work, slip stitch into this first chain space, and place a shell to begin. So if you notice, we will be going on our third row of double crochets, and just like in the very first pineapple, when we were going into the third row of our double crochets, we began placing 3 puff stitches into this shell. So we are going to repeat that. So we have 2 right now. I'm going to close this puff, chain 2, and I'm going to place another puff stitch right in this same chain space. So 1, 2, and 3. There you go. Now you have 3. Let's continue by chaining 2. So 1, 2. And we are on the puffy side of our pineapple, so we will be double crocheting behind the posts. We are not decreasing yet, so continue with 10 double crochets along each post of double crochets from the previous row. That's 2. Three, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Chain 2 and follow this stitch or this shell pattern and place another shell, puff shell right there. So now we are going to be going on top of our completed first pineapple. Instead of chaining 2 to reach the shell, we will not be chaining anything, and we're going to go straight into the shell by placing another shell. So do not skip anything or do not chain anything. Just go straight into that shell and place a shell. So I'll show you what that looks like. Shell here, did not chain anything, went straight into this space and placed a shell. So we are right here. Let's continue chain 2 and continue our row of 10 double crochets along the post. Again, since this is the puffy side, we will be going underneath the posts. So all 10 posts, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Chain 2 and finish the row by placing a puff shawl into this last one. So now you can see we have one puff pineapple so far, and we are halfway done building the next 2 on top of it. Let's keep going. Let's turn our work and slip stitch into the chain space and start the row with a puff shawl. Chain 2. So now we're on our 4th Actually, I just realized that we were supposed to place 3 shell stitches right here. So I'm going to repeat or backtrack. And I'm going to place 3 puff stitches right here. So I have 1, 2, 3. Close it up, and I'm going to place 1 more because this was the 3rd row of the pineapple double crochets. So we need 3 shell stitches. 1, 2, 1, 2, and 3. Now we can turn our work and slip stitch into this first chain space, pull it up, and place a shell into this first chain space. Chain 2, 1, 2, and place another shell right here. Okay, so now we have 2 sets of shells on top of the 3 puff stitches we made in the previous row. And that is going to set us up for our next pineapple that we'll be building. That's going to set us up for this 3rd row of pineapples. So now that we're coming on the 4th row of double crochets, we are going to start decreasing. So chain 2. And again, we are on the side with the different levels of pineapple. So we're going to come from the back and over the post, but we are going to skip this first one because we're decreasing. So jump straight into the second one. We're going to be placing 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. We did 10, 10, 10, and 8. Let's continue by chaining 2 and placing a shell along this row of shells we've been making so far. Now we are going on top of this first pineapple that we made, and just like in the previous row how we did not chain anything between the 2 shells on top of this pineapple, we're going to do that again. We will not be chaining anything, and we will be jumping straight into the shell space. So you can see I just closed the cluster, no chain, go straight in and create a puff shell. Now we'll chain 2, and just like in the beginning of this row, we are going to be decreasing our pineapple. So come in from the back, the second post, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Chain 2 and finish the row with 2 pairs, or 2 pairs of puff shells. 1, 2, 3. Chain 2, chain 2, To continue, let's turn and slip stitch into this chain, pull up, place a shell on top of the shell beneath it. Now we are going to be setting up this third puff pineapple. So we need to create the chain space that will hold the double crochets. So we're going to chain 2 and place a double crochet in this chain space. And chain 3, 1, 2, 3. This will hold the double crochets for our pineapple, the one we'll be placing 10 in later. Chain 2 and place a shell right here. 1, 2, 3. We are going to chain 2, and we're going to continue to decrease this pineapple, so we'll be skipping the first and the last posts. And because we are looking at the puffy side, we are going to be going underneath these posts. So skip the first one, go straight into the second. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Chain 2, place a shell right here. Okay, so in the last 2 rows, we did not do a chain space between the 2 shells over the pineapple. But now we're going to set up for this pineapple. So what we need to do is copy what we need to do in the beginning here and do these 2 double crochets separated by 3 chains in the same chain space. So this chain space right here, we are going to be crocheting 2 chains, and we are going to be placing a double crochet in this chain space. So that's 1. We're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and we're going to be placing a double crochet in that same chain space to set up for our next pineapple. So this will be holding the 10 double crochets later on. Chain 2 and place a shell right there. Chain 2, decrease this pineapple, so skip the first and the last post and go underneath the posts, placing a double crochet chain 2, place a shell right there, and again, whenever you see 4 puff stitches, you need to start setting up for your next pineapple. So you need to close this cluster, chain 2, and place the 2 double crochets in this chain space between these 4 clusters, or these 4 puffs. So a double crochet separated by 3 chains, 1, 2, 3, double crochet again, and that will set you up for your next pineapple that you will be needing to put 10 double crochets in. Chain 2 and close the row by putting your shell right there in the last chain space. Okay, so you would just turn your work over, slip stitch, and continue on with the pattern. So we left off right here. So what you would need to do in this next row is create your shell right here, skip this chain space, start your 10 double crochets here to set up for your next pineapple, Continue decreasing this pineapple until you get down to the last two, where you will double crochet 2 together. Along the row, you'll put the shell, 10 double crochets right here, the shell, decrease these 6 chains into the 4 until you get to the 2. Running along, you'll place a shell right here, 10 double crochets here, and a shell right here. So you just keep repeating this pattern. It is very simple. And if we turn our work over, you'll notice that our pineapples began to puff. So they become like a 3D effect. And it looks really, really cool. And if you want, you can even use the pattern like this and give the pineapple some levels. It's totally up to you. I think both sides look really nice in their own way. It depends on what you want to use it for and what look you're trying to achieve. But yeah, super simple pattern. Always start with a puff shell in the beginning, always end with a puff shell. The pineapples, depending on which side you're on, you'll either go underneath the post or over the post. You decrease after 3 rows of 10, so it gets down to 10, 10, 10, 8, 6, 4, and then the last 2 you're going to double crochet together. And you just keep repeating this pattern until it is at the size and shape that you like. And this one's a little bigger, so you can see it's going to keep going. Okay guys, that's the end of our tutorial. Thanks for watching.